venture capital, golden ticket, or giant Ponzi scheme?
Who wouldn't want a piece of that magical money showering pie? Let's get ready for Unicorn Porn, a podcast for founders who roll their eyes at phrases like "we're killing it" and "changing the world."
We riff about all the things you wish you could say out loud but can't or won't, like investor horror stories, founder mistakes, and bloated valuations.
The media has perpetuated this addiction to unicorn porn.
Nobody says if you take money, you have to constantly be raising money.
Before reality hits in Silicon Valley, companies exit.
I used to feel embarrassed that I wanted a lifestyle business.
Warning, these unfiltered conversations are highly opinionated, brutally honest, and politically incorrect. Please stop listening now if you're easily offended.
Unicorn Porn is brought to you by Lloyd Lobo, Wall Street Journal bestselling author and co-founder of Boast AI, and Melissa Kwan, co-founder and CEO at eWebinar.
So I built 2 startups in Blue Ocean over 10 years in the real estate industry. And both of them were such uphill battles, I vowed never to do them again.
But first, what is a blue ocean? I'm in Dubai and the oceans are pretty blue.
Pretty turquoise, actually.
Turquoise, yeah.
So blue ocean is a term to define a market space that has little or no competition. So you're like one of the first people or one of the first companies in the market.
So no VC can ever ask you, what if Google does it?
Exactly. Or they still will, but they're unlikely to do that.
Is there anyone else doing that?
But I feel like now, because I had a decade of that and how hard it was, I'm like on a life's mission to warn people about the mistakes that I've made. So the history is, when I first quit my job at SAP, I had all these different ideas. I would go to meetups to pitch them to other founders, just get feedback. And no matter who I talk to, the first response is, oh, isn't someone doing that? Like, as if it's a bad thing. But what do I know? I've never been in startups, never started a company, not from a founder family. And then I would hesitate and then change my idea a little bit.
We've both done this. Everyone does this.
To like try to get them to validate it.
Yeah.
Because I was also testing my idea. So for years, I thought I had to build something that didn't exist. So that happened in my first startup. My first startup became my second startup, both in real estate. So then when I moved to New York and I started pitching VCs, same thing happened, right? Like I would pitch them something, oh, but doesn't this already exist? Isn't this company already doing it? But the connotation is so negative. So then again, I would hesitate and try to change it to make it seem like I was more unique so they would validate me.
Did you ever stop to ask somebody, are you using that other product? Do you like it?
No, I just got nervous.
Exactly. It's so intimidating, right?
Yeah, it's so intimidating. So I didn't really know how to answer. But in my mind, if someone else is doing this particular product or idea, it's a bad thing because that was how it was framed to me. So I now realize, right, after having those 2 companies, that like building a product and having an idea in a space where a product already exists is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. What do you think?
I completely agree. And, tied to this is another theme. So I had interviewed Ali Tamasab, who is a VC, but he wrote a book called Super Founder. And he interviewed thousands of founders, particularly unicorn founders. And he found a common thread between the most successful founders of all time. The most common thread was they all had a small success, could be in the SDMs, single digit millions, before they went on to build this unicorn success. And I correlate that to like playing a video game, right? If I give you a video game where the boss in the first stage is so hard that you keep losing and losing and losing, you're just going to give up and move on. But if you have a few wins along the way, then you'll swing for the fences. You get better and better as you go on. And if you take on maybe as a first-time entrepreneur, the hardest project where it crushes your will, the market crushes your will, the investors crushes your will, your spouse crushes your will, then you may never recover and want to do another startup again. So maybe you start where there is more customers and there is a market, unless you really have the appetite to go and jump in the deep end of the blue ocean.
So I'll tell you how I realized this. Like I still didn't realize it after I sold my last company, which was Spacio. And just to give some context, Spacio is an iPad check-in for open houses. You go look at a house, you sign your name on a piece of paper. We were the iPad check-in version for that.
And that was Blue Ocean because...
It was Blue Ocean in real estate. It just didn't exist.
Okay.
Like people are using pen and paper for years.
They still do.
Yeah, and they still do. Like we got good market share, but we didn't really change the market, right? And I remember I went to my friend Victor's house. We both know Victor. Victor is the founder of Monos, right? The luggage company. But this guy's a wizard, right? Like I've seen him build, like, and he sells consumer products, but I've seen him build companies from 0 to 50 million in revenue in like 3 years. But he's done it again and again and again. And now he's doing the same thing, but he's always a second mover. So I was just chilling at his house, in Vancouver. And he was like, you know what, Melissa, like the reason why your startup journeys are so hard is because you always try to do something new. He's like, look at me. I'm the best second mover out there. He's like, the reason why second movers are best is because I look at every business, I look at their flaws, I look at how they market, I look at, where their successes are, and then I just do better than them. I find a better factory. And it was, when he said that, it was like the 10-year, like a movie, like 10 years of my past life, like flashed before my eyes. And everything became so clear. And I was like, oh my God, you're so right. So actually for today's conversation, I made a list of the 10 biggest learnings from my Blue Ocean days, right? I've got, right here, I have 6 biggest misconceptions and 4 biggest challenges in Blue Ocean because I want to bust those myths for people that are watching or listening today. What do you think?
Definitely. Victor, probably one of the best advices, right? Tied to this is like, why would you make your journey deliberately hard? Who is the most valuable company on the planet is an expert at moving second? Who is that? Any guesses?
Google.
And Apple.
Yeah.
MP3 player, right?
Excel.
Excel. If you look at Napster, right? And then now you got iTunes. Apple didn't invent the phone, didn't invent the MP3 player. They weren't first to market in anything. So I think being a second mover just proves that there is enough validation and you can do it better.
But no one told me that. So I want to save somebody today. Like if we save one founder from going into what I think we'll save many. Yeah, then this podcast would be worth it. So the first biggest misconception is my idea is incredible because no one's done it before. It must be incredible. So now I know it's a red flag. 7 billion people in this world. No one's ever attempted or done it. Like for me, the next question is why? Why haven't anyone done it?
Because it's probably either not worth doing it or the tech to enable it is so freaking hard that now's not the right time. And, in 2013, Alex and I worked on a chatbot called Automatically. And
so that's 11 years ago.
That's 11 years ago. AI-driven chatbot, okay? And nobody was doing it. AI wasn't a thing. And the word chatbot even wasn't used. I don't think we called it chatbot. Intercom wasn't even in the mainstream, right? It wasn't even in the news. It wasn't huge. And we leverage case-based reasoning, which is looking at historical data and try to replicate answers like a real human. And to validate the market, we looked at the Twitter customer service channels of JetBlue and Comcast, and they were getting blathered, right? Like nobody answers the phone, nobody responds in time. And we were able to run a Turing test and replicate it at near 90% accuracy. That's pretty good in 2013. And so we hit up these heads of customer service, the only way I knew, cold email, cold call. And they all loved the idea. They're like, yeah, we're getting inundated. And in the perfect world, if something just responded like a real human, we'd totally use it. Like, all right, how do we integrate? You got to go through a security review. A security review, we were doing Boast at the time. And we're using the profits from Boast to fund this project because we didn't raise money, weren't going to raise money, didn't want to. And that security review will kill the will of any bootstrap founder. Imagine in 2013 going through a security review with Salesforce and freaking Oracle.
Yeah.
So turn around, ran to an event that Zendesk was hosting, talked to their platform API person, and you get it in the store tomorrow. Next week we launched in the Zendesk App Store. It was a little widget on the side of the Zendesk screen. When Zendesk started as an email triage system, right, for customer service, it would pop up a response automatically. And we got it in there. We got like thousands of people downloaded. And the first answer, like it was first emails we started getting is, make this thing freaking stop. It is spitting gibberish. Then we made it edit or approve. So it populates the response. You can click edit or approve. And it's still valuable, right? Because it's answering a question. And so it routes it to the last person. It picks up a relevant answer and pushes it out. And the agent can edit or approve. And it was still spitting gibberish that the person had to rewrite the answer. And the key learning there, we gave up on it. I wish we had raised money, but we didn't. And it would have been a big market if we persevered. But nonetheless, it was so hard because AI was at its infancy. And we picked Zendesk. And Zendesk has such small clients, like unlike JetBlue, they didn't have historical data at the time for us to provide any sensible answer based on the information we had, because data is a huge thing for AI, and that dream died there.
Yeah, but I think now when someone says, oh, it really doesn't exist, what's going through my mind is, well, maybe the market's not ready.
Yeah.
The technology's not ready.
Exactly.
Or the business is not good. The business is not viable if it truly doesn't exist, right? So that was my learning, was with my previous company. It didn't exist because real estate agents just didn't like technology, right? We were trying to change a habit. So eventually we made it work, but it was such an uphill battle that I never wanted to do it again, right? So the second biggest misconception is, because it doesn't exist, I have more prospects. The whole world is my prospect. And with more prospects, I'll have more customers. And what I learned was people are risk averse. Yes, the whole world is not using a product like that right now, but nobody wants to be first, especially if you're selling B2B, right? The first thing they ask is, who else is using it? Oh, nobody. Why not? Right? So the education cycle becomes so much longer.
It's the whole crossing the chasm and the innovator's dilemma, right? It's like you start with the innovators, then the early adopters, and then there's this valley, and eventually it starts going mainstream. But nobody wants to, especially in B2B, be your guinea pig. It's very hard, and especially back then, like 10 years ago. Now at least the startup culture in the world has proliferated, changed. Everyone hears startups, they may give it a chance. But back then, B2B, early adopter, hell no, because nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM. So why would I pick this obscure thing?
But it happens now, right? What are one of the basic marketing principles of your website? Put customer logos on there.
Yeah.
Right above the fold.
Or steal them, make it up. A lot of people lie.
Right, but if the whole world is your customer, you have no customer, right? It's one of those things where it's like, if you try to be something for everyone, then you're nothing for anyone.
I see so many pitches and founders with their 10 slider invented by our friend Guy Kawasaki. But the up and to the right always is followed by, or rather, preceded by the TAM slide, right? You got this big market. The world is my market. If I can only get 2% of the world, I am going to be $1 trillion company. Come on, guys.
Yeah. The third one is, no competition means it's amazing. No one's there to compete with me. You know what the problem is with no competition? No one knows if you're good or bad. Yeah. If BMW was the only car that was out there, and you come to the dealership, I say it's $45,000. Well, is it $45,000? I don't know. I could buy this other thing that I saw, my uncle put together, but it also gets me from point A to point B. Why do I have to buy your BMW? So now you're trying to tell people, but the BMW is really well built. But you have no one to compare it to. So is it good or bad?
There's two sides to that, right? I think there's a different way to frame no competition, because I truly believe when you pitch with that, a lot of investors will see through that, right? Do you really have no competition? Your competition is this other obscure thing they might be doing, like pen and paper, or do nothing. What are they already doing that you're trying to disrupt or make better? But a lot of people just say no competition, and it's no competition in B2B also means in B2B, it's not as simple as I sign up with my credit card and use. In B2B, there's a procurement process the larger the company is. No competition literally means you got to now get into their system and work with the purchasing department to create a category for this product. You know how hard that is? I've sold to enterprises. I think my second job was selling to enterprises. And if the category doesn't exist in their procurement system, now you have another whole buyer group to convince.
Yeah. I mean, the very relevant, just as an example of having no competition. Like I think my company right now, eWebinar, it's not bleeding edge, but it's not popular. It's not like a CRM, right? We're peddling automated webinars. Not everybody knows about it. People know webinars. They know Zoom. They don't know what automation is.
Yeah.
So when you don't have competition, like a lot of competition, like we have a lot of like smaller competition, like smaller companies that like the companies we sell to don't know about, right? So they're like, well, Zoom says they could also do what you do, but it's like, but like I know that for Zoom, an automated webinar is, you know, a recorded video on a landing page. Well, for them, it's a feature. For us, it's a completely different product. It's an entire product created around automation. But because they've never heard about it before, they're like, but I could just add a feature here. What's the difference? So this is like the kind of stuff we had to try to overcome, like even with my previous company. So the fourth biggest misconception is everybody will find me because I'm the only one. Well, guess what? No one's searching for you. Because you're the only one. They weren't searching for it before. They're not going to magically search for it because you just exist.
People search, you know, I think this is a valuable exercise for everyone when they go on a startup journey. Search the problem. Don't search your product, your solution. People don't search solutions. They mostly search the problems they're facing. Search the problem you're trying to solve for your customer and see what comes up. Go to Google Trends, go to Google Keyword Tools, and search those keywords around the problems you're solving for your customers. And if nothing comes up, then I don't think anyone is searching for you. You're not going to find you anyway.
Well, yeah. And then what ends up happening is as a business, you need people to find you. So you can only go out to them instead of them coming to you. And the time to market just takes so much longer. It just takes so much lift. Yeah, or money. Right. But because I've always been bootstrapped, it was just, again, such an uphill battle, right? Every single door I had to knock on. I had to go to every single event, peddle my product, peddle my startup. So it was just super hard because nobody was looking for me. And so the fifth one is a little bit related, which is because I'm the first to market, I'm going to be the industry leader. Well, do you know like how long it takes to get meaningful adoption? You're not industry leader unless everybody knows about you, right? Like getting 2 customers because you're the only product does not make you the industry leader.
Or maybe for a short time, like Napster or whatever that MP3 player device was that was first to market. Nobody remembers, right? But you're not a leader unless a good majority of the
people
board
recognize you
and you have basically a preferred brand, right? And that's when you're a market leader, when you are the preferred brand for your category.
So I think in my last startup, we ran it for 5 years. I don't think we got there until year 4. And the industry, because we were an industry specific product, there was only like 200 brokerages that was meaningful that we could sell to. And even then it took us 4 years to get there, where people like heard our name and knew exactly what we did.
That's a good achievement, though. Not many startup founders can say that.
That's why I was acquired. Yeah, be the industry leader and you will get acquired if you don't die along the way.
You either die a hero or live long enough to become the bad guy.
So the 6th one is it's less effort. It is not less effort because of all the things we talked about. It is every single sales cycle is extra long because it requires an education cycle for every single person. Right? You are encountering every single objection is brand new, right? Who's your customer? What's your ROI, right? Like what's the adoption rate? What are they paying, right? There's so many different objections, right? Like, so I think people think because you're the only product, it's easier to sell because there's no one else to buy. But because there's no one else to buy, now every single sales cycle is twice as long as somebody trying to make a decision on a CRM.
Because there's no budget for it. Right? And they have to show the ROI of something that's unproven for a problem that's not, you basically help them recognize. They probably didn't even know they had it. And this takes time. HubSpot is the master of this, right? Marketing automation is a category they created, or rather inbound marketing. And, you know, it took them a lot of time and money and creating a lot of content and educating the world about inbound marketing and content creation at a time where the world was largely advertising and billboards, right? The world of marketing. But it took so long and so much time and so much money. And to do these things, you need the capital. You need the time to will it into existence. Just your will on bootstrapping is not going to move a blue ocean product.
So the crazy thing is, when I was living it, and I lived it twice over 10 years, I didn't even realize these things. Like, because I didn't have another experience. So I had normalized all this stuff as just startups being hard.
Because society told you, why doesn't that exist? Right? Like, or doesn't that exist somewhere? Like it became a bad word when you pitched your idea to somebody and they said, hey, I think somebody else is doing that. And you felt like you had to be novel, like never done before to be a successful founder. I think your experience with the startup world and society was conditioning you to move in that direction.
But it was exactly these 6 misconceptions that I believed in that made me keep going. Because I thought the reason why we didn't get enough traction was because I wasn't working hard enough, pushing hard enough. I wasn't hitting a nerve yet. I was constantly changing my messaging. But what I didn't realize while being in it was I was trying to do something that was hard, that comes with blue ocean territory. So my next 4 are the biggest challenges because as a result of needing to do this. And number 1 is every single conversation I had started from scratch. Oh, what is this? What does it do? Who uses it? Right. So every single thing was an educational process. But that was part of the sales cycle. It wasn't like, oh, I'm selling the CRM and they're replacing an old one with a new one. They already know the value prop.
Yeah.
Every single time I talk to a customer, I have to try to convince them that if agents use this instead of writing on a piece of paper, they're going to get more leads. Well, what's the proof? You don't have any proof.
And, I think we both started our startup careers at a time where the world was in an interesting phase, right? You got a lot of people who were, I guess, it's a bad word, maybe Luddites. That
was the industry.
It was anti-technology, especially in some industries like real estate. And I sold in manufacturing in one of the startups I was at. And those are industries where people saw technology as taking away their jobs. So they made it equally harder to sell into. Now the world has accelerated beyond that because the next generation is in the workforce and they grew up with technology and innovation.
Yeah. And so the second biggest challenge that we keep running into that I mentioned a bit earlier is like there was just no price comparison. Like we poured our blood, sweat, and tears to make this product amazing, right? All the design, the UX, everything just worked, right? It had offline mode. It was on multiple apps. It was on the browser. Like it was insane, right? This thing was like the Ferrari of like open house check-in. And we were charging like nothing, like $300 to like $800 a month to start, right? And we couldn't get people to buy it because people thought, well, but my CRM says they have a sign-in form as well. So why do I have to pay extra for your product, right? And the worst part is even for my first startup, we built, you know what a sales center is, like a real estate sales center?
Not quite.
So like before a building is built, there's like a showroom. Like it's all over Dubai, right? You get it. And then you walk into a showroom and then you get a really beautiful like coffee table book that wants to sell your real estate. We were, when the iPad first came out, like the second year, we were the iPad interactive brochure for real estate showrooms. You download an app, you flip through the book, the salespeople can log in and then they can like see the inventory. We tried to sell, an iPad app for like $5,000. Like anyone who knows how to code knows that that's like an insane price. After I made the first sale, like I was so happy that I made the first sale. When I delivered it, the client was like, well, where's the iPhone app and the Android app and like the Android tablet and phone app? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is what you paid for. Like they didn't understand that all apps are not built the same because it was so new that they thought an app would automatically fit on all devices. including the browser. They thought the $5,000 was expensive enough to include all the devices. Can you imagine getting an Android tablet and phone, iPhone, or iPad, iPhone, and browser app for $5,000?
Yeah, especially back then. The interesting thing also is you not only picked Blue Ocean, like something completely new for market, you also picked a very regressive market where people are sort of prided on their personal institutional knowledge, right? I have this knowledge, I have my relationships. For the longest time, not just real estate salespeople, but around the world, they didn't want to put their data in the CRM because somebody would steal their leads, right?
Yeah.
And the way real estate works is every broker is for themselves. And so coupled with being a market that is a little regressive, you also have this mindset of, I don't want my data anywhere else. I don't want somebody to steal my leads. I'm working this, right? So now you're dealing with this, like people just think technology is evil industry. So you picked like a double whammy.
Well, I mean, the thing is I didn't know, right? Because a lot of people don't know this, but after university, I sat in showrooms.
Yeah.
Like that was my first job. I was a receptionist for a sales center. And then from there, I went to sell real estate as an agent. So I know that industry super well. So it wasn't random.
Yeah, you picked the industry that you worked at, so you spotted the problems.
Yeah, because I was the person gathering those cards that people would draw a line on so that you wouldn't call them.
You tried to scratch your own itch, but you realized that these people just don't. They're a little, I guess, Luddite, so to speak.
Yeah, and actually the third challenge, which you brought up, is like every single deal we had to fight for the budget. When you sell B2B, budgets are everything, right? And I didn't know this. Never worked in corporate.
And there's no line item here for this.
So actually, I was in a meeting, and the prospect showed me the Excel sheet, and I was only asking for like 5 to 10 grand, right? Like for a real estate project that gets hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars to market, that's nothing. She puts out this Excel sheet, and she's like, "This is my budget. If I have to buy you, one of these things have to go. So which one is it?" And I was like stunned because I'd never seen a budget before. And for the first time I understood, oh, okay, someone has to lose, someone has to die for me to come in. And then I was in Vancouver at the time, and there were like only 10 companies I could sell to. Eventually that's why I moved to New York for this company, because I wanted a bigger market. But she said, in order for you to come in, not only does someone have to die, I have to take a risk on you. There's only 10 developers in Vancouver and like 5 marketing companies. If I take a risk on you and it doesn't work, I'm not going to get the next project. So while everyone talks about innovation, nobody wants to take the first step. Hey guys, real quick. Think about how you found out about this podcast. Maybe you saw it on social or someone sent it to you. The only way this grows is by word of mouth. So if you're willing to help us out by sharing it with others you think would enjoy this podcast as much as you do, it would mean a lot to us. Whether that's writing a review, sharing a tweet, or telling your next door neighbors, that would be amazing. Thanks so much, and now let's get back to the episode.
Nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM. Nobody wants to put their ass on the line for your innovation. In the early days, it's super hard, and especially if you're a new product that nobody has a comparable to, and you really, really got to do a very diligent job validating and finding those people who are innovators. You'll buy like a clunky piece of junk that's barely working and use it and play with it because they draw joy from trying and playing with something new. There's very few of those people.
And actually, this reminds me of a story. So we had this product. We had an open house sign-in product, no customers. And none of the big companies would talk to me, right? So we started trying to sell to individual agents. But, $15 here, $15 there, like it's not going to pay for yourself. And I was trying to sell to companies of all sizes. And in the end, the first set of companies who actually took the bite were the tier 2 companies, right? Not the innovators, right? It was, not the innovator, not the market leaders. They were the second tier innovators that wanted to be the market leader. So it wasn't the smallest firm, it wasn't the biggest firm, it was just in the middle. And that was our first sale. And then we had our first logo, and then we got our second, but that took, I think the first sale probably took a little over a year. And then I understood that, in order to sell a product that doesn't exist, you have to find people that want to be first. Not the people that are ready first. They don't care.
Because, here's the thing, right? Great companies must develop the muscle to transform if they want to last. And if they don't, they eventually get disrupted, right? If you look at Blockbuster, perfect example, got disrupted by Netflix. And so a lot of these companies, they become complacent when they're number one because they get so scared that they don't want to lose their spot. And they're like, why change anything?
But they don't need to change anything. It's not broken.
Yeah, it's not broken. Why change it, right? There's this saying by, I think he was the CEO of Intel. Success leads to complacency, and complacency leads to failure. Only the paranoid survive. And that's not saying be a freaking paranoid freak, but be aware that you can be disrupted at any time. And you need to innovate in your processes, in your systems, in your technologies, in how you operate around the board. And the people who are complacent at the top get disrupted. In vision, I think Figma ate their lunch, right? They were the only game in town 5-6 years ago. Now they're shutting down after being valued at 1.7 billion. Blockbuster, perfect example. But so I think I totally agree. You got to find the companies where they're not number one, they're not complacent, and they're hungry to get to number one because you show them a path to getting more leads or winning or a route to becoming number one, and they're all over it. They see the ROI.
I mean, eventually we did get the bigger companies. Like eventually we got like the number 1, 2 companies in real estate, but they were waiting for us to collect the logos first.
Yeah.
They just sat around to make sure it works. And it made so much sense in hindsight.
They're nearly a majority, basically.
Yeah, they were just waiting for, most people to adopt. Like when we sold our company, we only had about 100 customers, but the biggest company probably came at about 80, right? So the last biggest challenge was we had to sell on emotions, not ROI, because we didn't have any ROI. And when you sell on emotions, you can't demand the highest price. Like I don't think we ever did, right? Like we nudged our price up little by little over the 4 years, but I don't think we were able to really charge like the highest price because while we did get pretty good adoption, we never really changed the way things operated in the industry. I think most people still use paper and pen, unfortunately.
I think sometimes that's perfectly okay, right? You got to get it in people's hands. Here's the thing. If you charge the highest price but nobody uses it, you don't have a business. You start somewhere and then you can wedge up and wedge up and wedge up. You just, I think in the beginning, need to just get it in enough hands. If somebody's paying you something, that means they have skin in the game. Worse, I think, is just giving it away for free and then they don't use it. And rubber hits the road, and people put their money when people put their money where their mouth is, right? Like if somebody's not paying for something, their feedback even doesn't matter. They may not even use it. So I think you did the right thing by charging something.
Well, I needed to. That's what people would pay, right? You actually have to start with very little and then like slowly move your way up.
But if you were venture funded, you might have seen that as a hindrance and maybe had a free product and kept it going for longer, right? You had the option, you had the money to fund that. So you might have given it away for free for a long time and not gotten real feedback.
Actually, side story, I did start as a freemium product.
Okay.
Just sell direct to agents. And I didn't understand why people weren't paying, again, because they were actually using it in their business. I didn't know what freemium versus free trial was. And one of my mentors from the industry was like, why are you not charging for this? It's a business product. And I'm like, oh no, because I want to do what Dropbox is doing, right? I want to get more eyeballs. And he's like, are you stupid? If people are using this to make money, you charge them money so they could use it in their business. And actually at the time, it was really compelling because we were getting all this dumb support. Right, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. Everyone's yelling at you. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work, blah, blah. People that pay the least scream the loudest. And he's like, if you start charging, you'll remove all those people that don't pay. You're not going to have to support them. And then you're left with people who actually value your product enough to pay for it. And then they'll give you real life feedback. And that's exactly what happened. That was the best thing I did for that business.
I think that's the best thing most people can do in the B2B space. Dropbox started B2C. So I think one of the key things is not reasoning with analogy and reasoning from first principles. A lot of people say it works for this, so it might work for me. Oh, I want to get Slack-like growth, or I want to get Dropbox-like growth, or Airbnb jump-started growth by putting by hacking Craigslist. So I want to do something like that. Or Microsoft got 12 million users in weeks by putting PS I love you, use Hotmail. Hotmail did that. And can I get something like that? It won't work for you just because it worked for somebody else. I think you need to understand your customer and how they buy and their journey, and then meet them where they are versus offering them what Dropbox did, like the same hacks, right?
Yeah, and I'm having this conversation now not because I think Blue Ocean is bad, right? It's just these are mistakes that I made because nobody told me, right? Like I thought I needed to come up with something brand new, and I just kind of went with it, right? But I do believe that the world needs Blue Ocean companies for innovation.
You think Uber is Blue Ocean?
Absolutely, right? Uber, Tesla, Cirque du Soleil, right? Like not a tech company.
Airbnb.
Airbnb. Like, can we even imagine our lives without those companies right now? But think about how much money they had. And that's the conversation, right? Like, do whatever you want. But if you're doing something Blue Ocean, be prepared for the time it takes. Like Jason Lemkin is famous for saying, if you're going to found a startup, have 2 years of runway, right? Minimum. If you're doing Blue Ocean, have like 3 or 4. Just know that that's the game you're playing. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like, it's not bad, but I think most people are not prepared for what comes with.
You know what's funny is we tried to prepare for a lot of things, right? Like, this is what I don't understand. You go for a job interview and you'll prepare, right? You'll go for a school interview, you'll prepare. You prepare for your SATs. But when you want to jump into being an entrepreneur, you prepare the least. You don't learn about, who you raise money from, and the funding choice you make is how you live your life. You don't look at the market. You don't talk to other founders. You just jump head in. Jumping head in is good, head first, right? But if you don't know what you're getting into, if you don't know the game you're playing, how are you going to play it effectively, right? The goal is to jump head first, knowing the obstacles you're going to face, so you can at least tackle some of the early ones easily. The worst is like getting hit in the early phases and getting so bruised up that by the time it's time to scale, you're burnt out and you want to leave. You
know, in hindsight, I think about that comment a lot, right? Isn't someone else doing it?
Yeah.
Like, it's always crossing my mind. And now I realize that VCs don't just fund things that don't exist, right? They fund venture scalable businesses with traction. Now I understand that when I was asked that question, they weren't challenging me. They were just trying to see what I would say, right? And instead of doing that, I was changing my answer, right, to try to come up with something unique, thinking that that was the right path forward. Because we haven't been taught otherwise, right? I think we've been conditioned that being unique and first to market wins. You gotta be different. VC is literally, if it is the 100th product in the space, but with greater traction than anything else at a good gross margin and a large market, they will fund it. They funded Notion, right? And they funded, Notion is the how manyth product in that space. You got Notion, and you got Basecamp, and you got Monday, and you got Asana. There's so many companies in that phase, but Notion nonetheless is also worth $10 billion, right? And so I think the answer is ultimately, I can grow, I can get traction, I can get customers, I can keep them, and I can do it at a fast pace. But it's also, yes, there are companies in this space, and here's how I'm going to do it different and better. Exactly. Right. And that's what I realized as when my friend Victor was like, you need to be second mover. It was just like a light bulb, like an epiphany moment for me. That was a life-changing moment for me. And then I realized, yeah, there are so many different ways to make money. Like, if there could only be one of everything, there'd be one ketchup, one mustard, one kind of candy. But there's so many things on the shelf, and everything's differentiated. And for the first time, I understood that competition is good for you because it gives you a baseline to be so much better than someone else. That better could be you either offer a better product, and better could mean in terms of the quality or in terms of the price. Yeah.
right? Like for some people, maybe buying Adobe Photoshop is not only difficult to use, but it's a huge monetary investment. And so maybe I'll just use Figma or Canva.
That's why now for eWebinar, before I started it, because that was when I had the conversation with Victor, I chose something that already exists, right? Like there were other companies doing similar things, but they weren't selling to a market segment that I wanted to sell to. So this is what I call purple ocean, right? I kind of mixed the blue and the red. And I started making money from day one. Like I didn't have to convince anyone. There were other, there were price comparisons. People could try other product. They could come to ours and see what we were doing better and different. And it is such a huge load off my shoulders to not have to convince every single person that comes in why we exist, right? Because the question that prospects also have is, well, if you guys are so good, why isn't there anything else that's out there? Like you have to give a good answer to that question. You can't be like, well, because I'm the innovator.
I think at Boast we did something similar, right? I wouldn't call it necessarily purple ocean, but if you see doing automatically, Alex and I in 2013, when AI wasn't a thing, you're putting a chatbot, like nobody knew what chatbot was, and then it barely works and everyone's like, make it stop. You had to persevere and raise a lot of money to will that into existence. Sometimes, no regrets, but sometimes I wish we should have raised money and persevered and it would have probably been bigger than Intercom. You never know because you never played that game. You never took the chance. And then I did Speakeasy where we were creating an AI-driven sales assistant where before the call, it preps you for the meeting. During the call, it guides you on what to say. And after the call, it automatically updates your CRM. The company was incubated by a VC, Bessemer Ventures, funded by Salesforce and Bessemer. We burned through $6 million trying to make it work, and we just couldn't get the tech to work. And then with Boast, Boast started as an agency, helping companies apply for research and development tax credits from the government. Globally, hundreds of billions of dollars are given by governments to businesses who are developing new products or improve existing products. And we did this manually behind the scenes, better, faster, cheaper, because traditionally lots and lots, hundreds of agencies and big four, it's as a red ocean as it gets, yeah? Accounting firms, consulting firms, big four accounting firms, everybody, the gamut. You'll have like in any city, at least 10 competitors, right? And we're across the US and Canada. But we took a different spin on it. We had customers, we did it manually, and then we flipped to software. We said, you know what? Everyone else is applying for these incentives after you accumulate a year of product development spend, and then you spend another 3-4 months putting it together, apply it to the government. It takes another 3-4 months to get it. That whole process is a year and a half. What if you plug your tech stack and your financial stack to Boast? We estimate as you're doing your R&D if it qualifies or not, and then we front load you the cash right away. So use Boast, get your money now. And that concept took off. But literally, if there was no market for this at all, and we're educating the market on take money for R&D, people would be like, what the hell do I need your money for R&D, right? They would be confused. But now it's like, okay, we're already applying for this. We're already getting it through a painful, cumbersome process. I got to sit through audits. I got to wait a long time. And now I plug my systems to you and I mysteriously get the money and the work is done on the back end. So it's very easy to explain in the sense we went after a red ocean. And I don't know if this is blue ocean, red ocean, purple ocean. It's on the fence here, I think, in the sense that we took a very obvious market and we just automated it because they were existing customers and we had revenues on day one because we were doing it manually like for years before. So we flipped the switch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying the solution here is, only do red or only do purple and never do blue. Like all I'm saying is just know that if you're going for blue ocean, like a market that doesn't exist and you're creating a category, just know that it's an uphill battle. If you know that, you can be properly prepared.
100%.
Right? Runway, maybe you raise money, maybe you live at your mom's house for a while. Like don't expect it to be easy.
I think we have 4 blue ocean failures between the two of us, right? And so I think that the thing here for me, at least as I think of early entrepreneurs, it's a long journey, entrepreneurship. Doing anything worth doing is a long freaking slog. And if when you're starting out, you make it so difficult on yourself that eventually you'll break and be like, you know what, I'm just going to get a 9 to 5. So do something that'll get you some early wins, and nothing better than getting paying customers and making revenue, because that makes you feel really good. If you think raising money makes you feel good, that feeling lasts maybe a few weeks. After the TechCrunch article, sort of the glitz of the TechCrunch article fades, and after the champagne at the first board meeting, that comes to an end. Then you gotta chase, and you gotta chase fast.
So what is your one hot take for today?
I think my one hot take is, before you get into something, figure out who you're targeting and understand the problem you're solving for them real well, and search if it exists or not. And if it doesn't exist, go and talk to 50, 100 of them before you start building it, and see if you can pre-sell this thing to them. You can get it in their hands, right? I mean, before we build anything, we had paying customers. Try to sell to them and get it in their hands. And if it's such an uphill battle where it's not a line item on their purchasing team's book of vendors, then before you even get in the door, you might lose your will to do the business, right? And I've created this personal framework for myself before I take on a new market. Like, how do you figure out who you should target? One, do you have the passion for this audience or this business? Because it's a long slog. If you hate your freaking customers or that problem, you can't sustain. The second thing is it a small but growing market? I hate to start with large markets, because you're gonna have this uphill battle, right? Niche down, niche down, niche down as much as you can, because then you can identify with the buyer. The third thing is ease of access. I don't care how big the market is. If you can't get the budget, if you don't have ease of access, you will never have a business. And the fourth one is propensity to pay, which is tied to ease of access, meaning people don't pay you, again, you don't have a business. So try to pre-sell, talk to maybe 50, 100 people. I don't care, maybe launch a Kickstarter campaign. Whatever it is, get validation with paying customers before you embark on this journey, because it's gonna be long and painful.
I think my hot take for today is pick the battle you're able and willing to fight and hopefully win.
Yeah.
Like, just know where your capabilities are, right? Like, it's access to customers. Maybe it's access to industry knowledge, but pick the battle that you want to fight so that you can win.
But here's the thing, right? Here's the counter to that. Because you were scratching your own itch. You worked for years in the real estate market, and it was blue ocean. You picked a market that you knew well.
Yeah, that's correct.
So what was it that you missed there?
But I didn't know. I knew the business process well, but I didn't know the mindset of the user well.
Yeah.
Because I was on the other side.
Yeah. And
right. Like, because even though I was selling real estate, I was a 21-year-old, techie real estate agent. But most real estate agents are in their 50s. We were trying to change habit. We weren't trying to introduce technology. You tell someone who's been using pen and paper for 20 years that they should take this iPad and learn how to use it. Why? Everything's worked, right? They're not seeing revenue not earned as revenue lost, if that makes sense, right?
100%. Nobody sees revenue not earned as revenue lost, right?
So they're like, yeah, I don't know if I can get more leads. I have 2 here.
Definitely. And you know what's really interesting is you're selling to the Cigars Club. Although you understood the problem set, what you didn't understand is the mindset of the buyer. So in many ways, your hot take is tied to what I said, my hot take, in the sense, start with the buyer. If you understand their mindset, go all in. You'll at least understand the space you're trying to get into, the problem you're taking on, the challenge you're taking on. If you don't know it and go in blind, then it's going to be harder.
But I projected my pain onto someone else, because I was the receptionist that was collecting all these handwritten cards. I was like, well, wouldn't it be great if it was digital? And I projected how I felt onto everybody else without actually talking to them.
Yeah, but every agency has maybe 1 or 2 receptionists and way more real estate brokers and agents. And so I think I guess if you spend more time understanding the mindset of everyone else, you may have been deterred to go down that route?
And fortunately, we did win, right? We did have an acquisition. It wasn't as big as I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think I if I knew like what I knew today, what I knew back then, even knowing if I had, like I were to have an exit, I don't think I would have continued.
But then you wouldn't have had that exit. And sometimes it's okay to be naive.
I guess you never know, right? You never know.
I think, it's important for founders to be naive, like a little baby, right?
Yeah.
They're going to jump or hop on a bicycle not knowing that it's going to be painful.
Yeah.
But they'll do it. And you got to be naive, because if you know everything about everything and every nook and cranny, then you know the pain that's going to be around the corner, and you will not embark on that journey.
I always say there's a point where experience hinders you.
Yeah.
I wasn't there then, but I am there now. So there's so many things today that I actually wouldn't do, that I wouldn't even think about doing before.
But that one small win now helped you get to a bigger win, and hopefully the next many to come.
I mean, that's the thing, right? That was my life, and that's my fate, and I accept all of it.
I think we're all in a video game. Life is one video game, and the boss gets bigger and bigger and bigger at every phase.
And that's it for today's episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll hit the subscribe button to the Unicorn Porn podcast on your favorite podcast app. Head over to our website, UnicornPrn.com, to see the show notes of every episode. Unicorn Porn is spelled UnicornPrn. That's Unicorn PRN without the O. You can also join our mailing list to be notified of new episodes or when we have hot gossip to share. We promise to only share things you'll actually care about.
If you have topics you want us to rip apart, perhaps you got something you always wanted to say but didn't have the cojones to do it, we'll do it for you. Just connect with us on LinkedIn, Lloyd Lobo and Melissa Kwan.